gentlemen, my name's Joe Mills. I'm running for City Council District 4. This is my second term that I hope to win. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I work for you, and I've done a lot, City Council. It doesn't just take one person, it takes us all to vote together. I'm a person that brings people together, and I'm here to make sure that Emmett is a resourceful place for everyone. And do for the city is we're trying to beautify it. We're trying to work with our businesses. We're working with our youth. We're working with our seniors. We have the Simpson Center open now for all seniors and youth. We have the skate park for the youth. We have Airtopia for the youth. And if you want to keep what we're doing moving forward, going forward in life, then you know what? Vote for me for City Council District 4. Let us prove to you that we can get the job done.
Thank you so much for joining me, Crystal Clear. My name is Crystal Ruiz, and I'm here with a dear friend of mine, Senator Rosilicie Ochoa Bogh. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous.
She is one of the California state senators and absolutely a treasure. So I'm glad we get to have this time to talk together. You've been a senator for how long now?
This is my fourth year in the Senate. I was elected in 2020, and
that was the first time you ran for anything,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And so why did you run for state senate? I'm like, that's a huge deal.
It is. And you know, it's interesting. I'm glad I was very naive at the time when I decided to pursue the seat, but it was one of those things where, you know, looking back 2020, God had prepared me, placing me in different life, personal and professional experiences. And the opportunity came up when my predecessor was termed out. They were looking for someone that could represent the district, you know, with the current dynamics and demographics. And so I was approached and asked to if I had considered running for office and if I would considered stepping up on this end, but I didn't take up the challenge right away. It took me, you know, close to a month before I decided to say, you know what, let's give this a try and be able to do that. Had various conversations with a lot of my family members, especially my son at the time, because he was the one child who was still at home and he would be the impacted the most. And of course, my husband. And once I remember asking my son, hey, buddy, this opportunity came up and described what the responsibility would be. He said, well, let me think about it, you know, on how he was going to perceive the idea of me moving forward. And I thought, wow, I was actually really impressed with him, the fact that, you know, he needed to think about it. And then I proceeded to explain the pros and, of course, the cons of what it took. And after doing that, he said, Mom, do it. And I thought, you know, I had been serving in different capacities, volunteering with different organizations throughout my city, both through service organizations and through our church. I also volunteered. I was on the board for the East Valley Association Board of Realtors. I had been the former president and chair of the Yucaipa Chamber of Commerce, therefore on the board for 4 years, and I had been on the school board for at that time I think about 2 years. And so you know, looking back, serving our community, you know, on just giving back.
Weren't you a representative?
I also worked as a field representative part-time while still doing my real estate full-time. So I did that part-time as well. And that was a great experience because that brought me outside from my current home and brought me to the surrounding cities and realized, you know, all of these cities literally were equally impacted by the legislation that comes down from Sacramento, right? And you see how there's a uniform, as a matter of fact, I was a field representative. That's how I first met you. Actually, it was through the field representative position in there, and I did that as well. So all of those life experiences, professional and personally, just came back and really gave me the skill sets to be able to navigate Sacramento. Now that I look back, being a former teacher, understanding how the brain works, how we process information, how we learn. In real estate, how do we negotiate? How do we bring people to the table and ensure that everybody's... So all of my professional experiences really helped me prepare me for this job.
I really don't know how. I mean, honestly, Sacramento is corrupt. They are a little nuts up there, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But I want to know. I mean, your parents, were they born here? Where did you come from?
So, great question. So my grandfather actually immigrated to the U.S. He first began coming to work in the U.S. through the Bracero program. So he was hired in Mexico. He left his family in Mexico. His home was in Mexico, and he was hired to come here seasonally to pick fruits and vegetables. And then he would go back home. And he did that for many, many, many years, up until my grandmother became pregnant with her 7th child.
Oh.
And at that time, she basically told my grandfather, you know what, either we come to the U.S. and live with you, or you come back and you find work here in Mexico, because it was very difficult. You can imagine having all those little ones living in a very small rural town in Yucatan. It was very hard for my grandmother to do it all alone with at the time 6 kids. And so eventually the sponsor for my grandfather offered to sponsor my grandmother, and then at that time 5 of the 7 children, because 2 of them were of age or married. And so 5 of the kids came, and we believe my grandfather originally came here in the late 50s, early 60s. My father was 16 when he immigrated to the U.S.
Oh, wow.
So he was in high school, and he's the 4th child of 7 children.
Oh, wow.
So eventually he married my mother in Mexico. It's interesting because both my dad's side of the family, my mother's side of the family, had known each other for at least 1-2 generations back. They had known, as a matter of fact, when they would come into the city in Merida, my dad's family would stay with my mom's family in Merida when my grandpa or my grandma would go out and sell they used to make clothing and sell their clothing out in the city. So they had known each other since they were little kids. And so eventually my dad married my mom. She was 18, he was 21. And he brought her over to the U.S. after he married her. And a year later, I was born here in California.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Wow, how sweet is
The
that?
grandparents to my parents were immigrants to this country, first generation born here in the U.S.
And you spoke Spanish?
My primary language was Spanish. I didn't learn English until the age of 8, when we came back from Mexico. So my parents went back and forth, and we finally moved here at the age of 8. So we were born here, lived here for the first 5 years, moved to Mexico for a short period of time, and then came back to the U.S. at the age of 8, and then came back and forth up until, I want to say, until the age of 14. And then we did not go back to Mexico after the age of 14, stayed in the States, but lived in Hawaii for a period of time, Florida for a short period of time, and have been permanently in California, back in California permanently since 1990.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you think your grandparents ever thought that their granddaughter would be a senator? No, huh? I mean, how amazing is that? How amazing. Something they took a chance on. They came here for that American dream.
They did. They came here for economic opportunity, which they lacked really in Mexico. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so patriotic and so my heart is just full of gratitude, is because and why I try so hard to help people really embrace what this country has to offer, not forget, why our families left their primary home countries to come here. And it's because obviously the governments out in their native countries were not offering an economic system that allowed them to have opportunity and be able to thrive. Or, the public safety, with many of the countries suffering from gangs and cartels, and what's going on in the level of corruption that are going on in many, many countries. And so when I look at what we have here in the U.S. and I look at the opportunities that our family has been absolutely blessed to have, with the foundation of, hard work, personal responsibility, and the pursuit of education in order to really climb up the stairs. I remember my grandmother, my paternal grandmother was a former teacher, and she always would say, mija, para arriba, always upward, even, you strive for the stars, because even if you fall short, you'll land on the moon.
Yep.
And so just a ball of absolute positive energy and optimism and belief that you can accomplish anything. Not once did I ever feel or hear or think or believe from my family that there were obstacles that we could not overcome. Race was never an obstacle. Color of our skin was never an obstacle. Like literally nothing. And my parents always, and my grandparents as well, always said, whatever you want, you can achieve. You just have to work for it. It won't be given to you. And I'm perfectly okay with that.
We don't see that anymore. We don't hear it anymore. It's kind of odd because when I grew up, that was the same thing. You work hard, you do what's right. I always thought politicians work for the people. I know it's a novel concept here, but politicians are supposed to work for the people.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me into politics a long time ago. And so now you fast forward to today, and it breaks my heart. Breaks my heart when we look at the way, the country behaves, the just craziness.
Yeah.
On some of the things that go on in schools, some of the things that go on in churches. Churches used to be, did you know that the churches had a black-robed regiment? Do you know what that is? Mm-mm. The black-robed regiment is not what you think. It actually was, and still is, the pastors. The reason that we had the Revolutionary War was the pastors. The pastors preached from the pulpit, because there is no separation of church and state. That is all from a letter to the Danbury Baptists by the President of the United States saying, hey, there's not going to be one governmental religion. You're safe. You can practice what you want. So that thing didn't occur to them. It was the founding fathers who were just so blessed and passionate about building this country on the foundation of God. And the pastors came in and went, you know what? We're going to have to fight for this. Some pastors even taught their congregation how to load and shoot guns. They made and created the first militia. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be sitting here today, because they were the ones that riled up the communities. They were the leaders of their communities. And so today we've really started to see a revolution of the pastors again, and going, hey, this isn't right. We need to speak up, because that's their job, to look out for their flock. Mm-hmm. And they haven't been doing that. And so, in recent years, because they feel that their hands are tied, well, that all changed when Trump came in and he said, we're going to knock that off the Johnson Act, and we're going to allow you to do what you're supposed to be able to do. Wow. And so thank God that, we see some change here. And I think this time, we're going to see a huge change. I think that we're going to see things swing the opposite way, and it's just about time. Did you know that today they've had 2 attempts on President Trump's life. Mm-hmm. And today they found out that as soon as the feds took that second one in custody, they found out that there was a $150,000 bounty on Trump's head. Yeah. And they didn't do anything. They didn't alert them, nothing. Oh. Now that's why we have corruption. That's corruption right there. Why didn't they alert him immediately? Mm-hmm. And why wasn't his security elevated beyond what it was? It wasn't even up to normal presidency, but when they're threatening and they've taken out a hit on your life, that they've done this, they're complacent. So it's a crazy, crazy thing. And it amazes me how we can sit here and you'll see pastors remaining quiet. You'll see red-blooded Americans remaining quiet, saying this is okay. Because when you remain quiet, basically you're agreeing.
They're accepting the status quo.
Right, exactly. Now, it doesn't seem like your family does that at all. You're a fighter, and they were fighters.
We are, yes, very, very much so. And, they're very... My parents, it's interesting, our family is very, very good, right? There were 7 children that came to the U.S. Eventually, all 7 came to the U.S. There's about 26 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
And I can't think of how many great-grandchildren there are now, because I've lost track. But it's interesting because all of them have done extremely well through life choices. Mm-hmm. life choices. And those that have not been able to thrive as well is through choice. Even the ones in California, where it's really, really hard to make it right now for the average working Californian to be able to make it, they've been very blessed to have opportunities for school, for work. And so we're very, very grateful. And I think that's why we're so passionate about the work that we do, and why we're so civically engaged, at least in our side of the family. But then I have to just preface to it and give credit to my husband.
I was going to ask about him.
My husband, Greg, because it was him and his family that really put forward, this understanding of the importance of government and learning a little bit more of like, I remember his cousin was running for the state assembly, and I remember I was a new mom. I had a newborn baby, just a couple of months old, and so I remember going to the campaign headquarters of all places in Yucaipa, which is now our home. And helping to stuff envelopes back then, but not really understanding the process, which is why I'm so focused on education, by the way, because I, having grown up between the U.S. and Mexico, really didn't have a strong grasp of the legislative process or what it meant to be civically engaged. And so as a former teacher, everything that I've learned, I want to pass that on to my constituents in helping them understand how government works, the differences between the federal and the state government, and how to own your voice, how to know and understand that your voice has power, how to own that voice, and how to engage in the process so that you can feel your weight, the force that you have in giving feedback on legislation that works or doesn't work for you and your family and your community.
And so it's not always the loudest voice that actually works, does it?
I don't think so. I mean, it's the one that you hear the most, right? It's the one that you hear. But when it comes down to the closed doors and the interactions and so forth, it's people really engaging, knowing, what bills are coming up, knowing what committees they're in, knowing when to reach out to your assemblyman or to your assembly person and your senator, and sharing with them your support or opposition to a bill, or writing to the committee members and saying we oppose or we support. And then to the governor, if it gets to the governor, it's like, okay, let me let the governor know, what I believe or think about this. And I always say, because there's power in numbers. LA and San Francisco area, they've done a beautiful job in really teaching their community members the power of their voice and how to get engaged. We see so many of them coming and advocating in Sacramento. Now I'm on fire to do the same with the Inland Empire, which, as you know, is the fastest growing region in California, 5th in the nation. And so we truly have a power to direct legislation and policy and thought in Sacramento if we have an informed and an engaged citizenry.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things I love about you most, is that you want to educate us, and you do it in a way that's so sweet and kind. I don't think anybody can tell you no. I have to tell you, she is one of the favorite people, not just by me, but by the people in Sacramento. A lot of your political rivals or adversaries, I should say, they love you. They absolutely love you. And they've made it very clear, because I've asked time and time again. You know me, I'm always inquiring. And you are the number one favorite up there for all of them. And so they love working with you. And that's why you do so much up there that's different than, what we think. And you have a way of working with the other side that says, okay, we want to be a part of it. It's not just, all right, I'm going to pat you on the head and do this just because. They want to really be engaged and be a part of it.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge, huge difference. We are going to take a break for just a moment and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Introducing a revolution in roofing, the elegance of Spain now in metal. At LCA Metal, we blend artistry with strength. Our metal sheets capture the classic charm of Spanish design while offering unmatched durability. Resistance to all weather, our sheets are as tough as they are beautiful. These sheets promise longevity and style. With LCA Metal, your roof becomes a statement. Proudly made in San Jacinto, California, our sheets are a testament to American craftsmanship and innovation. Each piece is crafted with precision and care, ensuring the highest quality. In San Jacinto, we not only embrace tradition, but also push the boundaries of technology to bring you the best in metal roofing. Choose LCA Metal for a roof that stands the test of time. Environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and stunningly beautiful, our metal sheets are more than just a choice. Call or visit us today at 951-654-2874.
All right, thank you for joining us again. I am Crystal Ruiz, and I am here with one of my favorite people, Senator Rosilicie Ochoa Bogh, and we're about to get into the weeds right now. So I really want to know what type of things are coming down. What do we need to look for? Now, we know, and they always say, as California goes, the rest of the nation goes, right? And some of this stuff is crazy, Rosilicie. I am scared to death for not just the state of California, but for this country if they enact some of these things that are coming across. And I know you have some good news. I'm hoping you have some good news to share with us.
I do. I do have great news on so many fronts. We have good things, and then other things, not so much. So, some good things, are here locally. What we're doing here locally in our district. We have an amazing, great leaders and visionaries when it comes to water in our area, whereas the rest of the state, we hear about water shortages. They don't have the infrastructure, or the leadership and the vision, and it's a problem that has been escalating for decades in so many cities that have not been visionary. But we've been blessed in the Inland Empire that people saw the growth that potentially could happen here because we have land, and they could see that development would be happening in our area. And so many of our areas and many cities in our regions in the district have done a phenomenal job when it comes to water infrastructure. What's the other thing that we have? We have great visionary and great leaders in public safety in our counties. I represent both San Bernardino and Riverside counties, and both our sheriffs there are very, very keenly aware of what's going on in their communities. And especially, I can really vouch for Sheriff Dykes in San Bernardino, who's been, hands-on engaging with our local schools, our local community organizations, and really going with the people to explain things. And so building good camaraderie on there. I know Sheriff Bianco is loved in Riverside County because he tells it how it is.
He goes on national news all the time,
He
tells
does.
it like it is.
He tells it how it is.
Doesn't even back down.
Nope, he doesn't back down, and he has so much courage to be able to just nope, let me tell you why this is wrong.
Yep.
And he goes and explains just very much a common sense approach. And so very different styles with both of my sheriffs, but very well meant and intended within both counties. And so they're wonderful and have been really well supported. What else do I have? We're growing exponentially here. As I mentioned earlier, fastest growing region. We have the land, we're building. But this is where we're struggling as a state level, and where we don't mesh with what's going on in Sacramento, and that's with infrastructure, right? Public safety. Right, the mindset's a little different than what we here in the Inland Empire have been promoting or expecting. So the whole criminal justice reform system that coincides with the notion of what's it called? Criminal justice reform is based on restorative justice mindset. And, that is a philosophy of thought that is being really promoted at the state level. But unfortunately, many of the decriminalization that has happened, many of the lack of desire to increase penalties, but to reduce those penalties, to release people who have been incarcerated at earlier times, has not worked very, very well for the Inland Empire, unfortunately.
No, it's a revolving door.
It's a revolving door.
Get arrested. They know they're going to be out in a day or two.
Yeah.
So they do the crime, they do their little time, and they get out and do it right back. And what we're finding is it's getting worse. So the crimes are slowly going up, but everything is decriminalized. You don't put any of them in jail for anything, really.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. That's why Prop 36 is so important.
Yes, very, very important, because it closes the loops on so many of those well-intended, warm and fuzzy laws that pass through, but have not, the reality is, and this is where I talk about, with education, understanding the psychology, development of the brain. You have to understand the psychology of behavior, human behavior, to understand what's going to work and not work. That's what we use a lot to understand classroom management, to understand parental, education. All of that, we're not using that in our society at the state level. And so we're seeing a little bit of side effects. And I think there was a report that came out from the California Public Policy Institute, and I follow them all the time, love to read their reports and read what's coming out. But it was interesting because it had to do with the impact of Prop 47. And I actually disagreed. The first time I saw that, I saw something that I actually disagreed with. I think because I didn't see a strict correlation between an increase in crime necessarily with a lot of the Prop 47. But I want to just, for the record, just state that I think a lot of what we saw originally after Prop 47 was passed is the fact that many businesses, many community members were not reporting the crime.
Yeah, but I think that part of it was the crimes that they were reporting. They knew that theft had to be at 9,909, what is it, 950?
950.
950. So you could walk out with a brand new TV out of Walmart, and they just let you walk out because it was not, they couldn't punish them for it. And they didn't want their employees hurt, so they let them walk out. And
even now, we have, stores that will prohibit their personnel from actually stopping someone.
Yeah, because they're afraid they're going to get hurt. And the problem is once it's like being a parent, no means no. The California Senate and Assembly need to know no means no. And they need to put those tough restrictions on, or they're going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And we're just going to see it, and we're seeing it here. Yeah. And people, the crimes are elevating, the violence of the crimes. So there's not as many people getting arrested for the minor crimes, but the crimes that they're being arrested for are a lot worse.
Worse than that.
So they're more violent crimes.
Oh.
And they can say what they want, but we know, we've seen it on the streets. You go, I went to a Walmart. Rosilicie, I haven't even told you this one. I went to a Walmart at night, the one in Hemet. I think that one's a lot better well lit at night, so I always choose to go there generally at night. Now I don't go at night anymore because I was in the Walmart. I had two of my kids, and we just checked out, and we were getting ready to, walking by the restroom area. Everybody knows where that is in the front of the store. And all of a sudden, I look over, and I grab my kids, and I pulled them close, and I said, "Stand close to me, and let's keep walking." And I got them almost to the edge of the store, and I asked them to look back at the gentleman over on the side. And they looked back, and there were four young men, fighting age young men, with cases of water in their cart. And all these other particular items that I thought was very odd. And then when we went by, they weren't speaking Spanish. They were speaking Arabic. And I was like, oh, crap. They were the ones that are coming across the border that they've been talking about. This is a cut through for everybody, including them. And so they were loading up their stuff to take it back to wherever they had the people stashed to get them on to further out of the state or up north or wherever they were going. But I thought to myself, why should I have had to worry about that? Our border should be closed. the safety of our citizens, that border, you should come across legally like your parents did.
Yeah.
You should come across legally like my husband's parents. Not his parents, but his grandparents again,
Yeah.
did. If you come across legally, there's no problem. It's when you're illegal and now you can't tell the difference between the families and the regular. When I talked to Sheriff Bianco, he was telling me that you see all these children, they always show you these children coming across the border. He goes, you don't see children come across the border because the only children you're seeing coming across the border are sex trafficked children. They're not even their kids. And a lot of them, they're dumping off in the desert. I saw this one video of this deputy who had a cam on him, and I think it was an 8-year-old child came up to him, a boy. Well, of course, they're very cautious because they strap bombs to these little kids. And so he was very cautious. And he's like, what are you doing out here? And the kid was like, I'm looking for help. We need help. And he was like, who needs help? And he was trying to question this 8-year-old child just to make sure he didn't have bombs strapped to him. And he could put him in the vehicle and make sure that, everything was okay. But it's horrible that you would find a child wandering in the desert. He thought he saw a road, so he took the road. And God blessed him and brought him to a police officer, Border Patrol or somebody who had that. And he got to safety and they rescued the others. But they dumped the children. They just left him there. They didn't need him anymore because they that particular group wasn't worried about sex trafficking. They were worried about something else. They just used the kids to get across. And
So
it's
sad.
It's a sad, sick
It's
world.
sad. It is. We have, unfortunately, and I think throughout history, right, throughout humanity, we've known that there are individuals who are just not well-minded, well-intended. They're wrong. We have a system right now that wants to believe that every human being is good. Do we have the potential of being good? Absolutely. But there are still forces at play, especially for people of faith, that there will always be people that are not well-intended and are there to hurt others. And I think this is why it's important to note that throughout civilization, throughout the history of civilization, we've always had a code of law of some sort, right? A code of morality, a code of law, to protect people. And I think intentionally because we know the nature of the human being. And that's why I focus so much on parenting and families, ensuring that our families can have an environment where parents can be there, mentally, emotionally, physically, and even spiritually. Because the child, however we raise that child, hopefully with the best environment possible, creates better human beings. Unfortunately, we have patterns of family structures throughout that are not catering to that, or children who have not been able to partake of families that are whole, per se. And so I always want to focus on families and ensure that our kids have the best foundation possible so that they can be the best human beings possible. But when it comes down to what you're saying right now, do we have bad people existing around the world and in the U.S.? Absolutely. Do we need border security? Absolutely. And in part, not just that, on the safety part of the humanitarian, what I call the humanitarian component of it, is because there are many people who are being sexually trafficked, human trafficked, right?
They're mules. They're made mules. How awful, because some of that stuff,
it's horrible. It really
it's
is.
really
And, when
horrible.
you speak to our sheriffs who are at the front lines in the Inland Empire, taking care of, the people, they see firsthand what's really going on. We don't even
I don't know
see
how
that.
they survive. I don't know how they sleep at night. I just couldn't.
And this is why we have to pray for them so much.
Yeah.
We have to pray for them. And from the legislative side, we have to ensure that they have the resources they need to have the tools to be able to do their job as safely for them as for the people that they're trying to serve and those that they have to deal with. Also, really supporting the ability for them to have access to behavioral health services.
Oh, especially.
Imagine carrying all that weight of what you see.
Oh, yeah. And what happened to you?
It.
What happened, these children, and we'll never know where their parents are. never ever find them unless the parents eventually come and they do blood tests and whatnot. But now they're in a system where they don't speak the language, most of them.
Yeah.
And they've been sex trafficked or they've been made mules. How do they get beyond that? And that's going to take legislation from, hopefully our state's going to see that this is a need that needs to be, it's a hole that needs to be filled. We need to take care of those kids. We need to take care of the families that are torn apart because this isn't good. I know you got some good stuff, so you got to tell me.
But I also wanted to make, just to end and around that part, when we talk about the importance of having border security, I know there's a lot of people who believe, it's like we welcome everyone. But here's the problem that we have in the state of California. And I'm not going to talk about the rest of the nation. We're going to talk about California. Is that California is one of the most well-intended, big-hearted, generous state that you can imagine. Everybody wants to give everything. Everybody do right. However, the reality lies that California doesn't have unlimited economic resources to provide all those services. So especially right now, we have a huge deficit. This past year, $68 billion that we're trying to break hold. But we don't have all the economic resources to be able to provide for everybody that comes to this country. We don't even have it for the people that we're currently that are here. They're Californians. But in addition to that, we also don't fully fund any of our state, fully fund many of our state agencies and departments, right? And in addition to that, another layer is the fact that we don't have the workforce to be able to provide all of the services to everybody, including the ones we currently have and represent here that are legal. And some of them are our seniors, people with disabilities, and our military. So we have to do right by our first responsibility, just as we would in any home that we are going to place a child, in an adoptive family or in a foster family. We want to make sure that they have everything that they need, that they can provide everything that that child needs so that they can thrive, right? California is our home. The state, literally, the government needs to have all of the resources needed in order to provide everything that we're promising, everything that will be needed. And we need to start first with the people that we're currently representing, that currently are here, as the ones that I just mentioned, before we can extend and say, hey, we're going to help everybody else. Right. So on so many humanitarian levels, border security is incredibly important to ensure that we have what it takes and that they have what it takes to ensure that we don't have human trafficking or sex trafficking happening.
So now only if the Senate and the House or the Senate and Assembly would listen to you and the governor would listen to you. Explain that.
But I think most importantly, this is where we have to explain the realities to our constituents. This is why I've done almost 50 town halls in my district since given the green light in just under 2 years.
Wow.
And you won't see any other legislator who has been so engaged with coming to the people, one, for transparency purposes, and second, for accountability, and third, for education. And that's because I see the need. I see the need to have and learn how to have a dialogue about the issues that are impacting California beyond the warm, fuzzy intentions or titles that we see based on legislation or what people want to offer or say that they're doing.
It's never what is inside the document.
No, it's not.
It's always a warm fuzzy little a title, and then you dig in and you go, what the heck?
And this is why it's so important to have these town halls and have that dialogue. And my town halls are open to families. I want our youth to come. I want to engage our youth in conversations, our public in conversations, facilitate. How do we have those discussions using our frontal lobe language, right? Frontal lobe understanding, logical, analytical, and not our primal, where we attack and we vilify, and then we go primal, and then we become, those members who are like, okay, you're my enemy. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not even going to process what you're saying. I'm going to leave, or I'm going to fight you. That's where we've been. And I think part of it is also a result of the counsel that we've always heard. You're not supposed to talk about politics or
religion.
biggest mistake we've ever done as a society, because now what that has contributed to is having folks working in silos and echo chambers.
Yep.
That is the saddest thing that we've ever done as a society and a culture, and I want to break that cycle. And I want to model how do we facilitate those conversations. And that's why I think, you were mentioning, going back to the point about working so collaboratively and amicably in the Senate with my colleagues. They know I'm not there to vilify them. They know that I'm there to actually work on governance, working on policy that works for other Californians, and being honest about those conversations, not having to worry about, oh, what are the optics? What is this going to look like?
Oh, I hate that. I hate that.
And that's what's happening.
I'd rather know what's the truth. Just tell me like it is. Give me the information, and let's see what we can do. And that's the way you run it. And that's why when I go to your town halls, folks, if you get a chance to go to one of her town halls, I suggest you take up the offer, because you educate everyone in the room. And I'm always learning something new.
Okay.
And so, well, it's the truth. You know, I'm me. I always tell the truth. But I actually have learned more watching you than I have any other elected official. And it's only been 4 years.
Oh my goodness. You have no idea what joy that brings to my heart, because it is a work of love.
Oh, you can tell. And you can tell. That's why your passion for this region, your passion for California, your passion for this country is what we need. This is why I wanted you here, because I want people to know how much you have in your heart and how you're giving this, and your family is giving this to this country that you both love so much. And what a blessing you are. What a true blessing you are to this community. Now, fill me in on some of this good stuff.
So I just wanted to talk about, some of the positive things that we have in the Inland Empire, because we hear so many sad stories about what's going on. But, as I mentioned earlier, we had visionaries like Heather Dyer from our San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water. She is an amazing visionary. What a powerhouse of a woman. Knowledgeable, thoughtful, visionary, and very level-headed. She can really, converse on the ideas and where we need to go. The tourism that we have, our tribes have done beautiful resorts in both San Bernardino and Riverside County. I am blessed to have San Manuel. I'm blessed to have Morongo, Soboba, and they're just expanding. In the new district, my newly redrawn Senate District 19, which I'm running for re-election in, we're going to have Agua Caliente over there, and I'm so super excited to see the work that they're doing out there. But the tourism that comes, that they attract, has just been so beneficial, and how much the tribes actually give back to the local communities through charities, through the Chamber of Commerce, through scholarships, through all
the
of these
schools.
grants. For the schools, yes. I mean, they're doing extremely well. So I just want to highlight some of that point. The work of our nonprofits. I love my district. I truly, truly love my district, because they're real people. They're working people, working class individuals. We have so many seniors. We have so many service organizations who are volunteering their time and their resources to give back to women who are being, physically, domestically abused, right? We have organizations are giving back to our children, ensuring that they have extracurricular activities in our communities. We have organizations that are giving back to families who have lost everything and need a hand up in trying to get their lives back into order. We have so many service organizations in our area that they do a better job doing what they do than government does what they do.
That's why the government shouldn't be in that business. Really, we know, I believe in limited government, and the more we let them do what they do, the better it's going to be for all of us.
All of us. I absolutely agree. So that's been great. Here's something that I think the state is a good thing that I'm really excited about, and that's the fact that it's a nonpartisan issue, and that's mental health, behavioral health.
Yeah.
Republicans, Democrats, literally in Sacramento are working together, understanding that there's a huge need for behavioral mental health in our state, which we haven't had. There are waiting lines for people that want to get substance use help, and we don't have the beds.
That's crazy. That's one thing we should be. You know, you knew I was homeless.
Yes.
And during that time, it wasn't like it is today. It wasn't accepted. So you hid the fact you were homeless. If you were caught and you had drug or alcohol addiction, or some mental health issue, you were put in a program. And if you didn't want to go in the program, you went to jail. Those were the options. But people took the help. You know, they don't do that anymore. And so that's why the homeless issues, because people have a lot of these issues, and they just don't want, you're not going to make them unless they have to. They don't like the rules. So it's a little different nowadays, and we really need the tools to help them.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Grateful that I was able to serve for over 3 years in the Public Safety Committee in the Senate as the vice chair. And in that process, along with conversations with my local sheriffs, including Sheriff Dykes, I learned about, first of all, the concern that they had with incarcerating people who actually needed behavioral health or substance use disorders. And then learning from, Sheriff Dykes that, they're depending on the public safety environment to take care of these issues when they really are not trained or have the capacity to do that. And so it was through those conversations and that experience in public safety that that came the idea of introducing a bill 2 years in a row, actually, that would have allocated funding for mental health bed capacity across the continuum of need. And it got me really excited because I'm like, okay, this is a bill that would actually address an issue at the root of the problem rather than just doing a warm, fuzzy Band-Aid, right? And so it had unanimous bipartisan support in the Senate. It always got killed in appropriations. But I was happy that the second time I introduced the bill, in February, I think it was February or March that we introduced it, the governor came out in May and said, now is the time to expand the mental health bed capacity in California.
About time.
It is. The only difference was that, with my particular bill, I wanted the allocation to come from the general budget. So $1 billion, we had already spent over $20 billion addressing homelessness, but had not addressed the mental health bed capacity. So I had asked for $1 billion a year in order to build that capacity across continuum of need. We had the surplus at that point. So we had the money. We had $80 billion one year, $100 billion the next. So we had plenty of funding to have been able to expand that mental health bed capacity. The governor's plan was a little different. He wanted a bond.
Oh,
He wanted to take out a bond.
More money.
To be able to fill that. And it barely passed in the state of California. The voters actually voted on that. And it barely passed, but it did pass. So it will be happening, not in the way or financially, economically, the way that I would have personally done it. But at least we're going to get that built and start expanding that. And I think that should be a good way forward in order to address mental health concerns, as well as decrease the number of people who are being incarcerated and rather, redirecting them to the help where they can have. And we have great programs. We've seen that really effectively done in certain areas that have the court system to be able to redirect people rather than incarcerate them and get them the help that they need.
Nice. What else do you got for us?
What else do I have? So we've got the challenges that we have. We talked about the transportation infrastructure problem that we have in the Inland Empire. Unlike many of the other areas where they're huge on public transport, we don't have that developed right now in the state of California. And it's a little hard to do, especially in the Inland Empire, where we have communities where we have half-acre homes, we have acre homes, we have, it's not high density. Many of our communities are rural, they're not high density. So bringing and qualifying for that grant funding that are normally catered to the high density communities doesn't necessarily fit the Inland Empire. So some of those formulas have to be revamped to accommodate if they really want to truly help with that public transportation, we have to clean up the formulas a bit on that end. So transportation is one area where we really have to work on. Housing. We still have to address the issue of housing. Inland Empire, growing on that end. We're still building in the Inland Empire. We have certain cities. You folks are growing. You guys are building your housing, and really, and that's why we're the fastest growing region in the state of California.
Do you know, when I was first elected that year in 2012, we built 8 new homes. 8. Between then and now, it's over 1,900.
Wow.
So we are definitely growing out here. Thank God that we're past that, downfall of 2008.
Yes.
And
yes.
Whatnot. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on getting the housing, but getting it in the right way. Because Sacramento doesn't always know how we should do it here.
No, and actually, it's funny that you should say that. There was a legislator that's rumored to have said that the Inland Empire has ill-designed their cities because we're not doing the high-density, type of housing that they feel is more green. And I'm sorry, but I truly believe that we should let our local electeds, which reflect the local community members, and trusting them through their city planning, through their design for their city, their 10-year plan housing or 8-year plan for housing, allow them to design their cities the way that it fits their community needs and wants, desires, aesthetically, whatever that might look like. The state coming in saying, oh, the state's going to look like this, and this is how you're going to be moving forward, I think that's an overreach of government. I mean, this is where local control really comes in. And if we want to address the true inability to produce housing, let's look at the fees of what it costs to build in particular. Let's look at CEQA and how that's being abused in many communities to halt construction from moving forward, and how that in itself increases the cost. Let's look at the legislation from Sacramento that's actually impacting, well, we just need you to add this component or add that component, and how that also increases the cost, the end unit cost of the, all well intended, but lo and behold, it has a cost.
Consequence.
Yep.
It has consequences, and the ones who pay for it are you and me.
Absolutely.
Right.
And most importantly, our children.
Yeah.
Our children.
How are they ever going to afford college, out here? How are they going to afford, to even rent an apartment? It's astronomical.
That's why I'm so passionate about empowering people so that they can be informed and that they can be engaged in the process of legislation and moving forward, the ideas that are moving forward. The Inland Empire has so much potential in influencing that, but we have to get our constituents informed and engaged.
That is amazing. Anything else, Hemington?
No, I think we can end on that.
Cover all that?
Well, we have so much we could cover, but
we could be here for 2 more hours talking.
We could actually come back and talk about the rest at a different time and talk about more of the things that were going on, addressing fentanyl and the infrastructure for water, energy pollution. That in itself can just be
that could be one.
In insurance, yeah.
Yeah,
and insurance.
There's so much going on, and you're up there fighting the good fight for us. And we thank you on behalf of the state of California, but I'm going to tell you, on behalf of the country, what you just let them know is everything that happens here will happen across the nation. So how do we pre-plan? If you're not in California, how do you pre-plan for something like this? Because cities and towns, they need to be, like, we have a 2040 plan. So our general plan is now a 2040 plan, and it's way out there, but it really takes a look at the overall process of the way we do things, and it says, okay, look, this is the way things are trending, and how are we going to make these things work ahead of time, which is why our arena numbers, we're already meeting, thank God, because
Congratulations.
We're just thinking ahead, and that's what the rest of the country needs to do, because what happens here in California generally spreads across the nation, and some of it you don't want. Some of it is not good stuff. Some of it, though, the heart of our people, if we can just get, your message out, that it's so important to be active in politics, and I know we're not supposed to talk about that dirty word, but active in politics, start going and running for school board, start running for water district, start running for city council. Open your mouth and listen with your ears, because sometimes things aren't exactly how we think they are.
Nope.
And so it's always good to listen to the other side.
Yep.
And it's really good to find somebody like Rosilicie to educate you on how it really works. So we want to thank you all for joining us. We will catch you next time. Bye-bye.